Okay, all right. Happy Sabbath. Today is, let's see, what's the date today? This is May 13, 2017. All right. We are going to continue with the seventh seal. You got the light on. Okay, the seventh seal. We started last week, and we'll continue where we left off. We were doing the fifth seal. Anybody remember what the fifth seal was? The fifth seal. There you go. And when, it was the time of the Reformation, right? Reformation, Martin Luther. And there were saints under the altar, and these were the martyrs who were killed during the time of papal supremacy, right? And what were they crying out? What were they crying out? How long? How long? And what does how long mean? Right? What is this? They said, when are you going to vindicate us? We've already died for the truth. And all these people who killed us, they're continuing to live as if, what? This is not fair. What? You have to vindicate us. Right? And so the answer was, you rest for a little season, because there's going to be a time when you are going to be vindicated. There's going to be a group of people who has to join you. In other words, there's going to be martyrs that's going to join you, right? And when is that? At the end of the how long? And when is the end of the how long? We studied this last week. How long means always points to the Sunday law. So at the Sunday law, there's going to be martyrs, right? When those martyrs die, and then they join those martyrs that died during the 1260 years of papal persecution, then after that comes vindication time, right? And that's the what? That's the fifth seal. Okay. Right, now we're going to the, right? Remember we did that last week. We're going to go to that. Now we're going to go to the sixth seal. Now remember about the fifth seal, is that a literal? Could martyrs who died actually cry out? No. So what does it mean? It's a spiritual meaning, right? Now look at this sixth seal now. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. Wow. Oh, that's a big earthquake. One of the biggest earthquake that happened, right? And the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell, and even as a fig tree casteth her timely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Have these things happened? Right? It has happened. Now, are these literal or spiritual? Did this literally happen, or is it spiritual? It's literal. It's literal. This is literal, right? This is literal, right? Okay. And the heaven departed. Now, and then it goes. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Wait a minute. When is this? When is this? When is that? The seventh plague, right? That's the seventh plague. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, right? This is the seventh plague. Wow, it jumps all the way from this time, boom, all the way to the seventh plague, just before Jesus comes. And he said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? All right. So when did this, our pioneers understood, when did this great earthquake happen? It's the Lisbon earthquake on November 1, 1756. And what happened? It was such a big earthquake that it caused what happens at the earthquake at the side of the sea? Tsunami, right? Tidal wave, right? Tsunami. And what November 1. What day is that? It's Halloween. It happened on Halloween. You remember the last big tsunami that happened in our lifetime, the last big one? It happened in Indonesia. It happened on what? It happened on Christmas. Another Catholic holiday. Tsunamis come on big Catholic holidays. Oh boy. Be careful. All right. Pretty amazing. All right. When was the darkest day? May 19, 1780. When is the falling of the stars? November 13, 1833. Okay. And then after that, it jumped all the way to the 7 plagues. To the 7th plague, right? Oh boy. So they jump. In other words, what it's saying, I don't know what it really means, but in the great long sequence of events, it's really not that long, right? It's really not that long. Okay. All right. So let's see. All these things have been prophesied. It had been prophesied in Isaiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Amos, Haggai, Matthew, Mark, Luke, Acts. All of them have been prophesying these 3 events, right? These 3 events. Okay. Now we'll go on. We'll go to the next slide. Now this is Uriah Smith in the Synopsis of Present Truth, right? The opening of the 6th seal is the mark of the occurrence of a notable earthquake, followed in due order by succession by the darkening of the sun, the turning of the moon to blood, falling of the stars, the departing of the heavens as a scroll, and events immediately connected with the second coming of Christ, right? The earthquake was unquestionably the great earthquake of Lisbon, which occurred November 1, 1755. This convulsion of nature affected at least 4 million square miles of Earth's surface. The sun was darkened May 19, 1780. The moon refused to give her light the following night, and when it did appear, it bore the appearance of blood as described in this prophecy. The stars of heaven fell November 13, 1833. Other star showers or meteoric displays have been witnessed at different times, but this was the most remarkable and extensive of all. Mark, okay. What does Mark say? Mark speaks of the same signs that locates them at the same time, right? Mark said it also. He says, in those days, after the tribulation. What tribulation? Which tribulation? Babylonian tribulation? No, obviously it's papal tribulation. But wait a minute, it happened in 1755. Is this after the tribulation? It is after the tribulation. Because what did Ellen White say? Okay. It's after the persecuting power of papacy was restrained, which was near 1755. What did Ellen White say? When did persecution almost wholly ceased? How many years before the papacy received the deadly wound? Ellen White said, how many years? 25 years. 1798 minus 25 is 1733. So tribulation ceased in 1733. And Mark, the book of Mark said that. After the tribulation, it almost wholly ceased in 1733. Then these things will happen. Happened in 1755. And then 1780. And then 1833. All right? Okay. So you get that? That's why it's after the tribulation. We're not talking about after 1798. We're talking about 1733. What happened in 1733? My question is, what happened in 1733? Why did tribulation stop in 1733? Because who caused the tribulation? Who was the armies of the papacy? The Society of Jesus, right? The Jesuits. And what happened in 1733? They were abolished. The thing about it is, do you remember the date? It's going to make sense to you when it happened. July 21, which is midnight, right? So what's going to happen at midnight? Jesuits going to rise up. You're going to remember that. You're going to remember July 21, 1733, because that's midnight. And you know the Jesuits are going to rise up again. They are here. But they are going to have its effect on us at midnight, right? Great Controversy, page 304. Prophecy not only foretells the manner and object of Christ's coming, but presents tokens by which men are to know when it is near. The Revelator thus describes the first of the signs to precede the second advent. There was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. These signs were witnessed before the opening of the present century. In fulfillment of this prophecy, there occurred in the year 755 the most terrible earthquake that has ever been recorded. Though commonly known as the earthquake of Lisbon, it extended to the greater part of Europe, Africa, and America. It was felt in Greenland, the West Indies, in the islands of Madeira. Where's Madeira? Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, maybe? In Norway, Sweden, Great Britain, Ireland. It pervaded an extent of not less than 4 million square miles. In Africa, the shock was almost as severe as in Europe. A great part of Algiers were destroyed, and a short distance from Morocco, a village containing 8,000 or 10,000 inhabitants were swallowed up. A vast wave swept over the coast of Spain and Africa, engulfing cities and causing great destruction. Right? Right? It was on the All Saints' Day, 1755. It was on Halloween. Page 304. Oh, no, here. Basically right here. So this is Thyatira, right? Thyatira is for 1260 years. 1260 years from 538 until 1798, right here. 1798. But remember, the fifth seal is when Martin Luther started the Reformation, right? From 1517. And then the sixth seal starts at 1755, right? 1755 was the Great Lisbon earthquake, and then they have three more, okay? 6. And if you look at this, it's actually still within the time period of Thyatira. The 5th and the 6th still within the time period of Thyatira. But this is Sardis, and then Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the church of the Millerites. And Sardis is kind of like the end of the Protestants, when the Protestants really rejected, right? They're rejected. So you can see the timeline right there. This is the 4th, the 5th, and this is the 6th. Remember, the 5th is spiritual, and this is literal. All right. Okay. Now we go to 7th seal. Right? And when he had opened the 7th seal, but it jumps all the way to Revelation 8 now. Before it was in Revelation, 6, right?
6.
It jumps over 7 and goes all the way to 8. Wow. Revelation 7 is when Jesus goes into the most holy and all that. All right. And talking about the 144,000, right? Yeah. But Revelation 8, and when he had opened the 7th seal, what happened? There was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Okay. This is what we all have been for years and years and years never really knew. Except there was, Uriah Smith gave, when you read Uriah Smith, then he kind of explains. But even then, it's not completely satisfactory. It's not satisfactory because it doesn't make sense. Because the 7th seal, if the 7 seals are what? It's an opening of secrets. You have to know the secrets before your close of probation, right? You have to know all the truth, right? All the truths have to be revealed to you before you close of probation, right? Because how could your probation close if some of the truth you don't know? It's impossible. So it has to be before you close of probation. So this space of half an hour, we still have to define it. What is this space of half an hour? Okay. It is related to, and when he had opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven. It's related to a silence in heaven. All right. The seventh seal is introduced in Revelation 8:1. The only event mentioned is silence in heaven, about the same space of half an hour. And the only time brought to view in the Bible when this could be fulfilled. This is what Uriah Smith says. You know, it had to be something with Matthew 25:31. When Christ appears and all the holy angels come with him. When there can be silence in heaven. And this event we understand to be the one in which the sixth seal is devoted. It will be noticed that the language of the first 5 seals is symbolical. That of the sixth and seventh is literal. All right? Sixth and seventh is literal. There's going to be literal silence in heaven, and it's going to be at a space of half an hour. Right? So what was Uriah Smith talking about? This is what we were studying before when we did the 7 seals. Right? So it's going to be starting in 1844. The 7th seal starts in 1844. All right. But what does this mean? A silence of half an hour. You know, okay. This about the space of half an hour. This is what he's talking about is Matthew 25:31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the angels with him. What happens when he comes from heaven and there's no more angels in heaven? How is it going to be in heaven? It's going to be silent in heaven, right? If you think about that. And then he shall sit upon the throne of his glory. And when you combine that with Ellen White's quote, we all entered the cloud together and were 7 days ascending to the sea of glass when Jesus brought the crowns and with his own right hand placed them on our heads. The thing is that, remember, Ellen White said also, how long does it take for the cloud to come down to earth? He said it was several days, right? It's several days. And then to go back up is 7 days. So heaven is actually, it's going to be more than 7 days, but it says here it's about. So it's not exactly 7 days. But you know what? What doesn't make sense is there's no more time prophecy in 1844. What does that mean? And the other thing is that if you're going to heaven is when you're being revealed the 7th seal, and that doesn't make sense. How could it, while you're being, when Jesus comes is when you're being revealed the 7th seal. Your 7 seals has to be revealed to you before your close of probation. Right. So what does this mean about this silence in heaven? So we got to go and figure out silence of heaven, because the explanation of Uriah Smith doesn't make sense. Right? Okay, first of all, we got to go here. This is the 7 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Okay, let's read this quote here from Ellen White. Oh, what a description. How many there are in this fearful condition. I earnestly entreat every minister to study diligently the 3rd chapter of Revelation, for in it is portrayed the condition of things existing in the last days. All right? So in the last days, you're going to have the conditions described in the 3rd chapter of Revelation. Study carefully every verse in this chapter, for through these words, Christ Jesus is speaking to you. So what's in the 3rd chapter of Revelation? Which churches are in the 3rd chapter of Revelation? Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. So what is Ellen White saying? That these conditions will all occur in the end time. Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea will occur in the end time. Okay? So it's not only Laodicea, because these conditions will all occur in the end time. Okay, so Philadelphia, the people of Philadelphia, in their condition, are they? They're good. They're perfect. So what would they symbolize then? Yeah. The wise virgins, right? The wise virgins, right? What about Laodicea? What are they? The foolish virgins. Okay, in that case, who's Sardis then?
The one that's persecuted or
Yeah. No. It's actually not. That's Smyrna. Sardis. But who's Sardis then? Let's go and read Sardis. Revelation 3. Who's Sardis then? Who's Sardis? Sardis is that which is alive but actually dead. But those who are alive but actually dead, but then you keep reading, and then you'll find out that there's some of them that are going to be faithful. There's some of them that are going to be faithful and will receive a white robe, right? So, when you read that, if there's the wise virgins, there's the foolish virgins, there's going to be some that are going to be the Nethinims. It's got to be the Nethinims, right? Because they're still going to be, they're going to be white, they're going to have white coats. They're going to be part of the 144,000, right? They're going to be part of the wise. They're going to join with the wise virgins. Right? The what? Yeah, they're going to be. They're come in. They're the people that were dead, but that were dead. They were the Gentiles that they eventually will come and join it, right? Yeah, you can think of it that way. No, this is when you actually have to look and find out what it actually means. This is all spiritual. This is actually spiritual. Ellen White, because Ellen White said that those three conditions will be in the end time, right? So how do you interpret that? All right, I'm arguing that's how you interpret it. Okay, all right. You see, this is all right. So when we go, here is the seven. The 4 horses, right? These 4 horses. I like horses. They're beautiful. Right? The white, the red, the black, and the pale. And the pale is what? Thyatira. And Thyatira symbolizes 1260, right? And then the Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Okay. And Ellen White said, this is the 5th, 6th, and the 7th seal. Right? Okay, if this is Thyatira, and this is the time of Diocletian, and this is the time of Constantine, and this is the time of the Waldenses, this is the time of the disciples, right? This is the time of the disciples when they're Ephesus and they can go to the world and preach the gospel, right? This is the time of Jesus. Jesus, the time of the disciples, started with the time of Jesus. So this is the time of Jesus. But Ellen White said in Prophets and Kings is that the 1260 is also the 70. Right? The 1260 is also the 70. The 70 years of Babylon is also the same as Thyatira. So we got to put the 70 years of Babylon in a timeline also, which also ends. And where it actually ends, I already gave you this. I already gave you the answer. Where it ends is right here, because this is the 70. That's the time of Babylon, right? The 70 years of the Hebrew church. This is the Christian church. They have a Thyatira and they have a 1260, right? This is the Christian church. This is the Hebrew church. They went into captivity for 70 years, spiritually as Thyatira right there. Okay? Do you get that so far? All right? So they must have a Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea condition. All right? What we're wanting to show is at the time of Jesus, there were the disciples, and there was an evil and adulterous generation. Right? So there was two groups of people at that time. There was the Laodicea, and there's the Ephesians in the time of Jesus. This is the evil and adulterous generation that did not know the sign of Jonah. Right? Okay. So these are the 7 seals also for the time of the Hebrew church. In the Hebrew church here, that's the time of Babylon. So when you go back, okay, who's Ephesus then? You know, we're going to argue it's actually Moses. And this is the time of the judges. And this is the time of Pergamos, is the time of compromise, when the kings, right? The kings came, and because of the kings reigning for 490 years, they were compromising, right? They were compromising with the heathen. They took in the heathen, right? The heathen customs of having earthly kings and not God as their king. And then that's for that reason they were taken to Babylon for 70 years. But it ends up in the time of Jesus. And this is the time of the evil and adulterous generation that did not know that Jesus actually is right in the midst of them. Right?
But Philadelphia and Sardis.
Yeah, Philadelphia and Sardis, that's, we don't know yet. I don't know yet. Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of but the most important thing is this part here. You realize that there's two groups of people at this time. One is going to be passed by, and the other one is going to take the gospel to the world, right? Yeah. This is going to be passed by. Laodicea is going to be vomited out. And so in this time here, what's going to happen? There's going to be another group of people. There's going to be two groups of people. There's going to be Laodicea, there's going to be vomited out. And there's Ephesians, which is Philadelphia, right? Yeah. Okay. Do you get that? Yeah, makes sense, huh? All right. We'll continue. These are all, concepts that we're developing right now, just recently been developed. But this concept has been around for a long time. That in the Hebrew church, there's also a Thyatira, which is the time of Babylon, right? And that will make it line up, right? Line up right here. It's such that there's going to be an overlap. Just like the two sticks overlapping, right? Two sticks overlapping. The 7 kings of Judah and the 7 kings of Israel. They're overlapping. Just like here. Okay? You see overlaps. All right, let's continue. And now the thunder ceased. The trumpet. Now we're going to see what is this silence. Okay, what's the silence? We're going to read from Patriarchs and Prophets. What's this silence? Now the thunder ceased. The trumpet was no longer heard. The earth was still. There was a period of solemn silence. Then the voice of God was heard, speaking out of the thick darkness that enshrouded him, as he stood upon the mount, surrounded by the retinue of angels. Oh, this is Sinai. The Lord made his law. Moses declared the scene, saying, the Lord came from Sinai, and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from the Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000 of saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Yea, he loved the people, and all his saints were in their hand, and they sat down at thy feet. Everyone shall receive thy words. What was happening here? When there was a silence, God was giving Moses the 10 commandments. And what was happening down there in the foot of Sinai? There was a party going on. Those people down there were closing their probation. So you can see at this time there's a close of probation at the time of a solemn silence. Right? He was giving his law, and a group of people was closing their probation at the same time. Okay? All right. Let's see this one. This is from Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 2, page 117. The confusion was hushed. A sound of traffic and bargaining ceased. The silence was painful. Oh, okay, there's silence. This is not silence in heaven, but this is the silence in the temple, right? When Jesus had to come in it was before Passover, and he actually had to clean the temple, right? He had to clean the temple. Was it Passover or before Passover? I can't remember now. This was the cleansing of temples happened twice, right? But at the time of the cleansing of temple, there was a silence, right? Because the cleansing of the temple is also a close of probation for one group of people, right? It was God's people that used to be his apple of his eye, and they were closing their probation, right? When he had to cleanse the temple, right? Okay, yeah, we don't have to read the whole thing, right? Okay. All right, let me see. Then all faces gather paleness, and those that God had rejected gathered blackness. Then we all cried out, "Who shall be able to stand? Is my robe spotless?" Then the angels ceased to sing, and there was some time of awful silence. Right? The angels stopped singing in heaven, and there was a silence. When is this silence? Remember, this is in early writings, page 15. When Jesus spoke, "Those who have clean hands and pure hearts shall be able to stand. My grace is sufficient for you." At this, our faces lighted up and joy filled every heart. And the angel struck a note higher and sang again, while the cloud drew still nearer the earth. When was this? When the synagogue of Satan will worship them, right? This is just before the seventh plague. When the synagogue of Satan will worship those who have been risen up in the special resurrection. We're talking about the people who preaching the first and the second angel's message, those who are the 1335, right? And they were resurrected together with Caiaphas and those who stabbed Jesus, right? Right. So probation has closed already, and there's a silence in heaven at that time. It's talking about silence in heaven. Having made the decision, now this is Jesus in Gethsemane. Having made the decision, he fell dying to the ground from which he had partially risen. Where now were his disciples to place their hands tenderly beneath the head of their fainting master, and bathe that brow, marred indeed more than the sons of men. The Savior trod the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with him. You know what? He had trod the winepress because he had to drink the wine of the cup of wrath, right? He had to drink it for people who repents. God suffered with his Son. Angels beheld the Savior's agony. They saw their Lord enclosed by legions of satanic forces. His nature weighed down with sudden mysterious dread. There was silence in heaven. When was this? At midnight. This was at midnight in Gethsemane, right? So remember, at midnight there's a silence in heaven, right? So the seventh seal is opened up right before midnight. Because why? Midnight is the probation for who? For the priests. Probation for the 10 virgins, right? At midnight there's no more oil. So the seventh seal is opened up before midnight. So it's also, there's at all the waymarks, there's going to be silence in heaven. All right. It was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Okay? So we now know when there's close of probation, and we know there's close of probation at midnight, there's close of probation at midnight cry, there's close of probation at the Sunday law, right? But the doors are sealed and closed, right? But we know that. And those are the times of when there's silence in heaven, when there's close of probation, right? Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about this book now. The book is actually the the scroll that was sealed with 7 seals. All right, we're going to talk about this book. It was the Lion of the tribe of Judah who unsealed the book and gave to John the revelation of what should be in these last days. Something is going to be unsealed. There's going to be something that is revealed. There's going to be secrets that are revealed. Daniel stood in his lot to bear his testimony, which was sealed until the time of the end, when the first angel's message should be proclaimed to our world. Right? The book has to be unsealed, and there's going to be an increase of knowledge, and there's going to be secrets that are revealed. We asked John what he saw and heard in the vision of Patmos, and he answers. This is Ellen White still. Manuscripts Release, Volume 20. And he answers, and I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book. So there's a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book, to loose the seals thereof?" And no man in earth nor in heaven, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. Nobody can understand what is in it. Therefore, in his open hand, lay the book, the roll of the history of God's providences. What is it that is being revealed? Prophetic history of nations and church. Herein was contained divine utterances, his authority, his commandments, his laws, the whole symbolic counsel of eternal, and the history of all ruling powers on earth, on nation. In symbolic language was contained in that roll the influence of every nation, tongue, and people. So what is actually being revealed? The book of Daniel. Everything that is in the book of Daniel. That book is actually the Bible, obviously, right? And what is in the book of Daniel is being revealed. So slowly, little by little, the book of Daniel is being revealed by the opening of the 7 seals. All right? There's an increase of knowledge progressively. Let everyone who has been blessed with reasoning faculties take up the Bible and search its pages, that they may understand the will of God concerning him. In this book, divine instruction, right? That's what talking about, the divine instruction, divine utterances. The Bible is addressed to everyone, to every class of society, to those who every clime and age. And what does clime mean? Every clime and age. Anyway. To everyone. The prophecies present a succession of events leading down to the opening of the judgment. This is especially true of the book of Daniel. When was it unsealed? Starting to be unsealed? 1798. The book of Daniel was being unsealed, knowledge of the prophecies. So what we're going to say is that the unsealing starts in 1798. The first seal starts in 1798, at the time of the end, right? And it's going to progressively be opened up. What was given in 1798? The first angel's message. And what were they preaching? Jesus is going to come in 1843. Wait a minute. They were still wrong at that time. But there's going to be an increase of knowledge, right? The seals are going to be opened up one at a time. Okay. What Daniel was commanded to seal up and close is now through the all-powerful mediation of the Lion of the tribe of Judah revealed unto us. So it's going to be revealed unto us also. Right? What is being revealed? The opening then and unfolding of prophetic word is another convincing proof that we are arriving at the end of the age. The unsealing of prophecy and the revelation of the mystery of God being reserved until the time of the end. Right? Unsealing of the prophecy. And it starts at the time of the end. So for us, it starts at when? 1989. Because that's our time of the end. Right? This is what James White said in the Review and Herald. Okay. So we're going to put it right here. First angel's message, 1798. There's an increase of knowledge. Right? And then that message that was given has to be formalized. Right? And it could be either printed or it actually starts to be preached, in a logical way that people can understand it. That's how it's formalized. And then it's empowered, right? It's empowered when the Ottoman Empire fell. For us, it's at 9/11 when Islam was restrained, right? And then we have this new one here. It's called pre-midnight. But we also have midnight. And then we have the midnight cry. Midnight cry, there's a doubling because second angel's message and third angel's message. And then eventually we have the Sunday law here, okay? So these are the timelines, kind of like in a brief summary. So in our timeline here, this is time of the end. This is increase of knowledge. This is when the message is formalized. That's 9/11. And we know this is midnight. And we know this is midnight cry. And it's the Sunday law. But we now know there's a pre-midnight time period here that we're now really studying, that's being opened up to us right now. Okay, now we're going to start doing that next week. Right? Because this is our timeline. We're adding another one here for new understanding that's just been opened up. Right? This 9/11. We're living right here, actually. We're living right here. And we're going to prove exactly why. Right? So, what is being revealed is the 7 seals. Right? The 7 seals has to be opened one at a time, starting for us in 1989. For us in 1989. So it's being opened on one at a time. Right? And even until, so the Sunday law is here. But this here is for whose probation closes at the Sunday law? Adventism, right? Yeah. For it actually closes at the midnight cry, but the door completely closes at the Sunday law, right? For the priests and the Levites, for Adventism. Okay, we will see that the 7th seal has to be opened up before the close of probation. Now we have to see in the timeline of William Miller. We have to shrink it down because in the beginning, William Miller was actually preaching that Jesus is going to come in 1843. But then he has increasing knowledge. And then starting in 1843, in May 3, 1843, he says, you know what? It has something to do with the Day of Atonement. It's something to do with Day of Atonement. And the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. And who took on that message? Who took on that message afterwards? It was Samuel Snow. And Samuel Snow started preaching. He started preaching on February 16, 1844. And he continued his message April 3. It was formalized because then it was printed. He wrote a letter and it was printed. So it was formalized so that everybody now can read it. All right? And then April 19. Oh, that's the second angel's message being given. Right? That's the end of the 1335. Second angel's message. First angel's message. Second angel's message. And then he also was preaching it on May 2nd, 1844. And then he gave it at the Boston Tabernacle on July 21, 1844, which is midnight, right? So he keeps adding and adding, so it progressively gets increased, right? He eventually was completely, they understood that it was October, the date is going to be the Day of Atonement on October 22, 1844. And they got that message at the Exeter camp meeting in New Hampshire on August 15, 1844. And that's the midnight cry, right? So the midnight cry message completed what they didn't know before. It perfected their understanding, right? They have an increase of knowledge. So the unsealing is the perfection. It gradually becomes more and more clear to them. Eventually they realized, you know what? It's October 22, 1844. Now they weren't completely, accurate, right? Because obviously Jesus didn't come at that time, right? But this is when the seventh seal is opened up for them, because their close of probation happened in October 22, 1844, and that's what we have here, October 22, 1844. So the seventh seal is opened up before that time, and that is August 15, 1844. So in our time, we're going to get to that, okay? We're going to get to our time now. Let's see for our time. Okay. This is for our time now. Here, this is 1989. This is 9/11. This is midnight. This is midnight cry. This is the Sunday law, right? Sunday law. For our time. Let's do this over again. When he had opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven about the space of half an hour, right? We know that there's going to be silence in heaven at midnight, right? There's going to be silence in heaven, because when Jesus was in Gethsemane at midnight, there was silence in heaven. So that's a silence in heaven right there. There's going to be silence in heaven here. There's going to be silence of heaven here. But we know there's one right there. And our close of probation is at midnight. So, all right, here's another thing. Notice this. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about the space of an hour. And then I saw the seven angels which stood before them, and to them were given seven trumpets. Wait a minute. Then the seven seals is associated with the seven trumpets. Now this is getting confusing. That's why I have the seven trumpets here. Okay? The seven trumpets. Is this consecutive or what? How's the seven trumpets related to the seven seals? Now the seven trumpets is also called what in Revelation 9? And the rest of man which were not killed by these plagues. What are the seven trumpets also called in Revelation 9? It's also called plagues. So we're talking about there's going to be seven trumpets or seven plagues.
Is the seven last plagues? The plagues that were
Yeah, so
going on, 10 plagues.
So you know what? I was confused about this. I had to put it on a timeline. So we know that the seventh seal has to open up for us before midnight, okay? And it has to start at 1989. Okay. So I put this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had to make it small because I had to fit it right here. The seventh seal has to be opened up for us at just before midnight. Right? Make sense? Because this is when the silence happens in heaven. Right? But what are the seven trumpets now? Remember, it's the seven plagues. And for us, it's what? It's spiritually the 10 plagues of Egypt. So let's put the 10 plagues of Egypt. How do we put the 10 plagues of Egypt? Right here. The first 3 happens here, and here's the last 7. Do you see that? So here's the 7 seals, and here's the 7 trumpets, which is called the 7 plagues. The first 3 ends at midnight, and after midnight there's going to be 7 more plagues spiritually, which is 7 trumpets. Okay, we're almost done. We're getting to the end. What are we? Well, we still got time though. Okay, all right, we'll see. All right, so what does this mean? What is actually being revealed? What is it that is actually being revealed in 1989? What prophecies was being taught in 1989 that was being revealed? To that, we go back to our... No, it was not. It was not 2520. The 2520 was first started studying here. What was first studied in 1989? The prophecies. Daniel 11 verses 40 to 45. That was being revealed in 40 to 45. And that was incomplete, right? Because like the time of Miller, at their time of the end, they were preaching that Jesus is going to come in 1843, but that was not correct. They had to increase their knowledge until they knew exactly what was happening, and then they realized that it was actually 1844 on October 22, right? So for us, if it was Daniel 11 verses 40 to 45, what do you think is the seventh seal then? Something that will perfect this 11, 40, 45. What will make it complete? When you study verses 1 to 39. Right? Does it make sense? Right? So now Daniel's prophecies are completely understood. Do you realize that we now know all the Daniel's prophecies now? And that the majority of the world don't even know Daniel 11. There's only a few people actually in this world that actually really, really know Daniel 11. It's being revealed to us right here. We just finished studying Daniel 11 verse 1 to 39. 40 to 45 was first revealed here. And as we were studying all along, eventually 1 to 39 is fulfilled right here. It's all the details are put in place. Do you get that? Do you realize we are right before midnight? Because right after the seventh seal, what's going to happen? There's going to be silence in heaven. And silence of heaven was when Jesus was in Gethsemane and struggling with the cup of wrath, whether he's going to drink it or not. Right? Boy, pretty amazing, huh? So wait a minute. During the time of William Miller, when they didn't understand that Jesus, they thought that Jesus was going to come in 1843. What was it that they did not know? The fullness of year, right? What happened with that understanding, fullness of year? What was happening with that understanding? God covered his hand. You know, it's in early writings 2:35. God actually covered his hand, right? God used his hand to cover that mistake, right? And what happened? God removed that, his hand, and then mistake was revealed. Okay. You can read that in early writings. We already know this. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. Okay. But God revealed. So, if God revealed a mistake for the Millerites, do you think there's going to be something that's God is revealing to us now that his hand was holding, his hand was actually covering? Remember, it has to happen. What happened then has to happen now. There's something that is revealed now. Okay, the hand of God. I put the whole quote here, but we already know this. We read this many times. Okay, God's hand was lifted up from that understanding, and it was the fullness of year, right, for the Millerites. What is it in our time? What was it in Daniel 40 to 45 that they didn't know, that when they finally figured it out, then now they can understand Daniel 11 verse 1 to 39. What was it? What was it? King of the South is the king of the South. Because when we first studied, not we, but those who first studied Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45, they thought that the king of the South was USSR, and USSR fell and there's no more king of the South. Right? It was the understanding of king of the South. In the Revelation, all the books of the Bible meet and end. Here is the complement of the book of Daniel. See, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation is one, right? One is a prophecy, the other a revelation. The book that was sealed is not Revelation, but the portion of prophecy of Daniel relating to the last days. What is that? That's Daniel 11. it's not just 40 to 45, it's the whole book of Daniel, right? Daniel 11, sorry. It's the whole book of Daniel 11, correct? That's been revealed. The angel commanded, but thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of 1989. 79 and 1989. Okay? And after that, oh, see, that's Daniel 12:4. Okay? So, this is what we studied. Okay, let me drink something first. Oh, boy. I'm coming to the conclusion here. I'm coming to the conclusion. Oh, boy. Do you see the picture now? Do you see the whole picture? This is Daniel 11, verses 1 to 39. All right? This is Daniel 11, verse 1 to 39. But Daniel 11, verse 40 is up here. Okay, what's Daniel 11, verse 40? And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. Who's the king of the south that pushed? King of the south is? No, hold on. The first part is here. Here, 40 verse A. Who's the king of the south that pushed? France, right? France pushed at the king of the north. Who's that? The papacy. France pushed at the papacy, right? And delivered the deadly wound. That's 40 part A. And the king of the south pushed at him, right? That's 40 part A. What's part B? And the king of the north shall come against him, right? The king of the north. Who's now the king of the north that comes against him? Right? America and the papacy. It's still the papacy, right? The papacy comes against him. Who's him? Russia. USSR. Okay, we have to qualify now because we now know better. It's USSR, right? Now it comes against him with what? With chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over, right? And after that, Daniel 11 verse 41 is what? And he shall enter into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overflown, and these shall escape. What is that? That's the Sunday law already. So, verse 40 and 40, part A and part B, and then suddenly skip to 41. And we go, wait a minute, what happened? What happened in between? Everything is missing in between. And then when we studied Daniel 11, verse 1 to 39, all of this is revealed to us. Whoa! It's a big, shining light, right? Big shining light, right? I'm just going to go. Verse 1 to verse 9. Verse 1 to 4 is about the 4 Persian kings, who actually we interpret as the last 4 presidents of the United States, right? This 1 to 4. And then verse 4 to verse 9 is about the French Revolution, right? It's actually the Diadochi Wars, the first, second, and third Syrian War, right? Remember Bernice and Laodice, right? Remember? And his brother had to come and revenge his sister. Here, the brother which is Napoleon had to come, and because it's his brother. Remember, it's Joseph Bonaparte in Egypt. I mean, in Italy, right? So we see that the French Revolution and the time of Napoleon is found in verse 4 to verse 9. Okay? And in verse 10, I put the whole thing in here now. In verse 10, what does verse 10 say? But his sons, who's his sons now? Is Reagan and Bush. His sons shall be stirred up and assemble a multitude of great forces. And one, who's one? That's Bush now. And one shall certainly come, and overflow, and pass through. Then shall he return, and be stirred up, even to his fortress. Now, we understand now, what was being hidden? That Russia actually was not conquered. It was USSR that was conquered in verse 40b. But in verse 10, the king of the south is still Russia, because Russia was not conquered. So the understanding of the king of the south, which is Russia, is the thing that was hidden, right? Because without that understanding, we cannot open up any of these verses anymore. We don't understand who's the king of the south, who's the king of the north. Nothing of this will make sense. And then we go through all the way down to verse 39. All right? Okay. All right. So now we understand what is being revealed. Now this is pretty scary now. Do you realize we're at the seventh seal now? There's no more. Everything that we're going to do now is kind of like a repeat. We're going to study and repeat and enlarge what we already studied. There's really not going to be, because this is Daniel's what? This is Daniel's last vision. This is last vision. After Daniel 11 verse 45, what happened? That's Daniel 12:1. What happens? Michael stands up. Michael stands up. Wow, pretty scary, huh? We're really at the seventh seal now. So this is the point of all this. We're studying why? The seventh seal. And what we are studying, we didn't realize until now that we're studying the seventh seal, which has been opening up. And that with that, there's going to be a silence in heaven. And that's going to be when? Midnight. Midnight, okay? You know, we do have a little time. I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna just go over, right? We have a little time. I'm just going to go over for those who hadn't studied Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45. I'm gonna put here all the summaries, right? Here's the summaries, because we didn't do this. We studied 1 to 39 with you guys, all right? But we didn't do 40 to 45. We've studied 40 to 45 before, right? Yeah, I'm going to go through the what? I'm going to go through the summaries. Here's the summary. At the time of the end, 79. In 1798, atheistic France, later atheistic communism, will take the Pope captive. Right? Later on, it's actually the Catholic states being annexed. Right? And the papacy, right? The papacy and the king of the north, which is papacy, is Rome, is the custodian of the Babylonian religion, shall come against, will ascend and mount. Him, the USSR, which is king of the south, in 1989. All right? To take away fearfully and sweep away like a whirlwind, with military strength, with chariots and horsemen, and economic strength, with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and he shall enter the countries that were under communist control, and they are now being freed. Right? Okay. Right. And shall overflow and take control, and pass over, cross over, and overrun without hindrance. Okay? This is what we studied before. Okay? Verse 41. And he shall enter the glorious land. The glorious land is what? United States is spiritually conquered. And many, right? Many, not many countries. Many shall be overthrown. Many shall accept the Sunday law. And but these shall escape. But these will slip through the grasp of the papacy, the king of the north, out of his hand, out of his control. Who? Edom, Moab, which are the Nethinims, which are the children, children means first fruits, the first fruits of the loud cry. The Nethinims are the first fruits of the loud cry also. They're also first fruits, right? That's 41. Verse 42. Man, we're just going through this like so fast. It took us weeks to study this. We're just going through the summary. He shall stretch out his land. He will place his control on what? And all upon the countries. The independent lands will lose their sovereignty at the universal Sunday law, right? And the land of Egypt, which is the rest of the world, which is United Nations, shall not escape. They will be not delivered. And he shall, right, verse 43, and he shall have the power, he'll have absolute total control over the treasures of gold and silver, over the precious metal markets, and the commodities market. He shall have control over the economy, right? Because you can't buy or sell. But that's already started even at midnight cry, right? You can't buy and sell. And of Egypt, of all the countries of the United Nations, of all the world, right? That's Egypt. And the Libyans, who are the Libyans? The poor countries. And who are the Ethiopians? The wealthy countries. He's going to shall march with him in battle, right? But the tidings, which is the message of Christ's righteousness, out of the east, which is the loud cry, and the east wind. What comes out of the east? East wind, Islam. And out of the north, who comes out of the north? The throne of Christ is there. Jesus is going to come. That's the tidings of the north. Shall trouble him, will make him afraid, will make the papacy afraid. Therefore he shall go forth, and he's going to deal with his troublers with great fury to destroy, to enact the death decree, right? And utterly take away many, take away the Sabbath keepers. And he shall plant, 11 verse 45, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace. And he, which is militant, modern, global Rome, shall plant the tabernacles. The tabernacle is this church, which is Mikdash. It's not Kodesh, it's Mikdash. Of his palace, which is his state and throne, right? He's going to make a state and church and state. Between the city, between the seas. The seas is the earth, which is Armageddon. And this glorious holy mountain, right? The glorious holy mountain is the church. The church what? The church triumphant. The 144,000. He's going to plant his tabernacle between the earth, between the world and the 144,000. So that the 144,000 will not be able to give the loud cry message, to block the loud cry. That's what he's going to do. Yet he shall come to his end. And that's the final fall of the king of the north. And that's the end of 11 verse 45. What happens at the end of 11 verse 45? At the end of it, you see what happens at the beginning of Daniel 11. Then the whole book of Daniel, right? The whole book of Daniel. What's the beginning of Daniel? The book of Daniel. Daniel 1 verse 1. Daniel 1 verse 1 says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came into Jerusalem and besieged it. So what happened in the beginning of the book of Daniel? Daniel 1 verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar, which is Babylon, conquered what? Jerusalem, which is Judah. Is this literal or spiritual? It's literal, right? What happens at the end of the vision? Spiritual Judah conquers spiritual Babylon. The end, right? You know the end from the beginning. It's a chiastic mirror, right? All these things are being revealed, right? Okay. And then what happens? And none shall help him. Nobody can help him. And then Michael stand up. And at that time shall Michael stand up, that great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time, and then there's a time of trouble. That's the 7 plagues. And the wise shall shine as the brightness of firmament, and turn many to righteousness as stars forever and ever. And then the righteousness and those stars, the 144,000 will with their countenance will light up like Moses when Moses came down from Sinai. When did that happen? When God roared from heaven and declared, "It is finished," right? And then their faces lighted up. And then the synagogue of Satan will worship them, right? But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.
So my book is open now. So Michael stand up symbolizes close of probation.
When Michael stands up, that's the close of probation for everybody. There's nobody. All who are wicked shall be wicked, and who are pure shall be pure, shall be wise will be wise, who are holy shall be holy. There you go. Who shall be holy who is holy shall be holy. All right, we get a few more slides. We have no time to lose. Troublous times are before us. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. The prophecy in the 11th of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history has taken place in the fulfillment of the prophecy will be repeated. We thought it was only 30 to 36 that was being repeated. Even then, we didn't even understand it. We knew it was 40 to 45. We knew that was coming up. That's been going on from 40 to 45. But we didn't realize that all the way from verse 1 was being repeated. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the Holy Covenant, is the papacy. So shall he do, and he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the Holy Covenant. All right? Scenes similar to these, described in these words, will take place. We see evidence that Satan is fast obtaining the control of human minds who have not the fear of God before them. Oh boy. Let all read and understand the prophecies of Daniel 11. Why? For we are now entering into the time of trouble spoken of. Okay, this is so important. Let all understand and read and understand the prophecies. Why? Why do we have to understand Daniel 11? Because we are being prepared for what? The time of trouble, which is the 7 plagues, right? So if we are being prepared for that time, and we're studying now, it is so that we can go and pass through the 7 plagues. What happens if we pass the 7 plagues? We will never die. So, what does that mean? What does that mean? Some of us here will never die. Do you realize that? Some of us here will never die. Because as we're studying Daniel 11 and understand Daniel 11, is preparing us to go pass through the 7 last plagues. And whoever passes through the 7 last plagues will never die. That's why Daniel is a eunuch, because he's the last generation. So what are we? We're the last generation. Do you realize this is, I can't believe how important this means. You have to know Daniel 11 to be able to pass through the 7 plagues. And that is the more sure word of prophecy.